Hello everyone and welcome back. Hope you like the new background and style. This week we're going to be looking at Rusty the Rust Bucket Steiner, the Tama, Godot, Edward, Dorgann, and the dreaded Rampere. Alright, let's get to it. Okay, so Steiner. When Steiner, or a category 9 character, enters your field, activate Steiner. Dull, choose one forward, it gains plus 1000 power until the end of the turn. During this turn, the next damage dealt to it is reduced by 1000 instead. So he has the ability to basically put a 2k power swing in there, but not quite. It's a weird one, that. So Zidane is one of the cards that comes to mind in regards to him, because when Zidane enters the field, obviously you can activate Steiner, but one of Zidane's abilities when he enters the field is you can activate all the 9 characters you control. So effectively you can reactivate Steiner twice. What's also good is that Steiner will lower Zidane's cost as well. So you are able to play Zidane for 2, reactivate all the 9 characters you control, including Steiner, and then use Steiner's dull ability twice if you so choose. And then you can use him on himself and go swing him with Steiner or someone else. Ico, so it's nice to be able to play a backup, which can get you something, but then also use Steiner's ability, or just reactivate Steiner. So I'm talking about all of these abilities, or all of Steiner's abilities, in regards to preemptively using his dull to like buff himself or another forward. But obviously it's useful to, maybe you could have attacked with Steiner first and then played something like Ico to then reactivate him, so you've got him in your opponent's phase to then block with. Zidane, so playing Zidane and using Steiner's ability on him means that he has effectively got a 2k leeway on his attack, so he'll be attacking for 3, but he can, well, he can't get through a 4, but it means that he can be blocked by a 3, which, let's face it, is small, but it just gives Zidane that bit more protection off of Steiner, and means that he's a little bit harder to kill, even though he is only 3k. Freya, so Freya's enter the field ability is when Freya enters the field or attacks, choose one forward dependent controls and loses 2000 power until the end of the turn. That combined with Steiner's ability of giving something plus 1000 but also minusing the next damage they have by 1000 is super useful, because that effectively means that you're being given at the very definite, a 3k power swing, but kind of a 4k power swing because the damage minusing as well. Garnet, so similar to Zidane, you can play Garnet onto the field, that will activate Steiner. Steiner can then also activate himself off of Garnet's entry as well, so they've got 2 abilities effectively doing the same thing. But what's nice is that Steiner's ability to minus 1000 damage to something, combined with Garnet's ability to minus 5000 damage dealt by summons, is super useful, and because Garnet and Steiner, their ability kind of combines on the entry, means that you can use Steiner's ability twice, so Garnet enters, trigger Steiner, use Steiner's ability, and then Garnet's entered, so triggered Steiner's ability, use Steiner's ability, and you see where I'm going with this. Basically it means that you can use it repeatedly and just keep on giving yourself nice buffs. Now Raoban enters the field, you can use Steiner's ability to give him plus 1000 and then minus the next damage he takes by 1000, meaning that he would then become a 9 that actually takes 8k damage, so you've effectively swapped the damage he would deal himself and his power, which is quite useful. It means that he would survive, hopefully anyway. Hecaton, similar sort of thing, so it would mean that obviously Hecaton deals damage both ways, so you would buff the forward that is dealing damage to your opponent's forwards whilst minusing the damage that their forward is dealing to yours. And then Phoenix, so being able to play Phoenix, deal 8k to something, but also bring in a 9 character to activate Steiner. That would then allow Steiner to potentially block if there's another forward, so say your opponent's got a couple of forwards, they attack with one, you Phoenix, you deal 8k to the one that hasn't attacked, that stands Steiner back up as well, he can block and then use his own ability on himself as well. Okay, Tama. When Tama enters the field, choose one Earth forward of cost 5 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field. Pay 6, dull, put Tama into the break zone, choose one Earth forward of cost 5 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field, dull, you can only use this ability during a turn. So her entry ability alone I think is really good because it brings the forward onto the field active, so that means that you have, it's at 7, so if your opponent sees you playing 7, they assume that you're going to be playing Shantoto, but to play Tama gets you a backup, but also gets you a forward as well, so you've effectively only, if you do actually bring a 5 cost forward onto the field, you've only really paid 2 for this Tama. Now, a character that I like to run this Tama with is other Tama, because you can, on a whim, say your opponent attacks with something on their turn, you can pay 7, put Tama into the break zone to play Tama, to bring a 5 cost forward from your break zone onto the field, and then you can block with that forward. It also stands to reason that then she would also be able to then use her pay 6 ability on your then coming turn, because she would have been on the field a turn. So, kind of in the vein of this, you could break Tama to play 7-cost Tama to then bring Gipple onto the field. Gipple will give plus 4,000 power to all the forwards you control, including himself, and yeah, you've got a 12k blocker, 13 if you have Enna Crow. C card, so similar sort of thing. C card would come onto the field, she minuses damage she takes by 2,000, all the Earth forwards, and let's face it, if you're playing this Tama, you'll probably be a mono lightning. All the Earth forwards you control will be minus 1,000 to the damage they receive as well. Rydia, being able to pay 7 for Tama to get a backup to then play Rydia to then just find yourself a summon, maybe something like, let's go Raiden. That can be quite effective. You've paid 7 to gain a forward, a backup, and play a huge summon. Glaive, so you probably obviously run this in something like maybe an FFL deck, but probably more likely Warriors of Darkness, and probably going to be Lightning Earth, because running Glaive in a Warrior of Light deck with Fire, with Soul, isn't as strong. But Glaive, when he enters the field, you can search yourself a card named Soul or a card named Diana, so you can go get yourself that Diana. But then the category FFL forwards other than Glaive you control gain plus 2,000 power. So say you've already got a Diana down, you play Tama to get back Glaive, who died the previous turn, to then buff that Diana back up again, and you've got Glaive to sat there getting you another Diana to hand, or maybe even Alba. You know, it's a nice way to be able to recur something back onto the field, and it's already a threat for your opponent. Lannister. So one of the reasons I like Lannister so much is the fact that he only requires 2 points of damage on your part to then be on curve. At that point, moving forwards, he then just becomes a much better Dark Knight. So your opponent could deal you your 5th point of damage, and then they go to attack something else. You break the 2-cost Tama in your break zone to play this Tama, to then play Lannister, who is a, 12k? Just block? Wow, that's huge. And like I said before, Tama, I can't understate this enough. Tama brings the forward onto the field active, and the fact that you can effectively make any forward a back attack through that effect is awesome. Cecil, he enters the field, choose one dull forward your opponent controls. If its cost is equal to or less than the damage you have received, break it. So paying 7 for Tama to then bring in a upright Cecil who can potentially break something but is also on curve. He's a 9k 5 cost with an EX and an S. That's a powerful card. Kefka, so this is more like if you're attacking with Kefka, you're putting something into the break zone, so playing Tama to then bring that forward back could be useful. Arden's a pain to get rid of anyway, but when Arden enters the field, choose one forward your opponent controls. It cannot attack or block until the end of the next turn, but when Arden is put from the field into the break zone by your opponent's summons or abilities, play Arden onto the field at the end of the turn. So he's already hard to get rid of, but if by some means your opponent does get rid of him, just play Tama, bring him back onto the field. Again, he's on curve, so that's super useful. The Death Lord. So you pay 7 for Tama, you bring out the Death Lord. Death Lord gets you Veritas of the Dark. You play the Veritas of the Dark with Star Sybil. So you've paid 7 and you've broken a backup to get Veritas and the Death Lord onto the field, and you've got yourself a backup through Tama. Now, if you've got 4 backups, one of which is Star Sybil, you'll dull 3 of those backups probably, and discard 2 from hand, one of which could be the Death Lord, to play Tama onto the field. Tama then can bring the Death Lord onto the field, which means that you have effectively only paid 5 for Tama, the Death Lord, and then broken a backup to play Veritas. That's pretty good going in my book. Okay, Godot. He's not a hugely played guy. In fact, he wasn't even hugely played when he first came out in the first set, but, you know, he's a weird card. Any card that can play something for free isn't too bad. So, you can pay 2, and when Godot enters the field, you may play 1 fire forward, of course 2 or less from your hand, onto the field. When Godot enters the field, all the forwards you control gain 1,000 power until the end of the turn. So, you're effectively paying 2 to just get 2 forwards out. It works best with something like Haste, but Phoenix would also work well. You, on your opponent's turn, you play Phoenix, deal 2k to their board, you bring out Godot to then bring out another forward. That will have gained +1 from Godot's ability as well, but Godot himself, he would be a 5k because of his own ability, and he's effectively then a 7k blocker because of Phoenix. Obviously a forward that he works well with is Warrior of Light, because when Warrior of Light enters the field, he gives +2,000 power to all the forwards as well, so similar to Godot. So these two go hand in hand. You play Godot into Warrior of Light, you've just buffed your field by 3k. If you happen to have a couple more forwards down, Warrior of Light then gets haste as well. Now, if you want to power this up even further and go with Xande. Let's pretend for a moment that you're on 5 damage. You play Xande. You choose Godot in your break zone, who when he comes onto the field will then choose Warrior of Light from your hand. Now obviously it requires you to have Warrior of Light in hand, but still. And then you could bring out Ranger for 3 and Zac for the 1. So what you've got there is 5 forwards who are paying 8, one of which is Xande, Zac, Ranger, Warrior of Light and Godot. Now Warrior of Light will have met its prerequisite of having 4 characters to then have haste. He will have gained +1 from Godot and +2 for himself, which means that he'll be an 8k to attack. Ranger, will also have haste. Again, it will have gained 3 from Godot and Warrior Light's ability, so it'll be a 7k. However, when it attacks, it deals 2000 damage to all the forwards your opponent controls, so that effectively makes him a 9k attacker. And then you got Zac. So if you did attack with Ranger and your opponent's got another forward that they didn't block with, at the end of your turn, you have to discard a card. If you've got Zac, it's mandatory. If you do so, deal it 5000 damage. So if you've got an attack off with the Ranger, and then you go to pass your turn with Zac, you then deal a further 5k to something, meaning that you should have dealt 7k to a forward, hopefully killing it. And then Une, this would have to be a super specific deck, but you know, if you've got a deck where you're making value out of playing things out of your hand, you know, you could have other cards like Shelk where they just play stuff from your hand. But you could be bouncing things left, right and centre just to play things out of your hand for free, effectively. So you could be running summons that dull your opponent's forwards to play Godot, to then play a small little haste Tifa or small little haste Zidane, to then just go swinging. Okay, Edward. So he's a bit of a strange card, but I really like him. During your opponent's attack phase, when a forward you control is put from your field into the break zone, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. So he's quite restricted in the sense that your opponent, well, the forward that dies, it has to die on your opponent's attack phase. And that's quite awkward, but you know, sometimes you have to create these situations and stop, and it means that your opponent won't want to attack effectively. So if you've got Dorgann down and your opponent doesn't have a way to get rid of him then and there, I mean, it's already kind of annoying having to pay any amount of CP to get rid of a 1 CP which is going to make you discard. That's really annoying. If you're paying 3 CP to get rid of this guy, you've effectively paid 5 now because of the discard. And if your opponent only has a way of getting rid of him during their attack phase, like by attacking, then that means they will have to discard 2, which isn't fun. Galoof. So Galoof cannot be broken during your turn, so it restricts the way in which your opponent can break Galoof. I mean, they can still break it in their main phase 1 or 2, but again, it's a restriction which limits their options and means that they do have to do things maybe in their attack phase. Imperio, so when Imperio is put from the field into the break zone, you may search for 1 dark forward, add it to your hand. So not only would Imperio's death in their attack phase mean that they have to discard a card, it also means you can get yourself a card. Vanille, so this is a weird kind of way of doing it, but Vanille would be milling all the hecatons out of your deck when she dies, but she's still there, and that's the problem for your opponent. It's the fact that unless they're removing Vanille, Vanille will just stay sat on your field, but every time she leaves and goes into the break zone, they have to discard, but then you get rid of a hecaton, she pops back in. Thief, so if they were to die in your opponent's attack phase, they'd have to mill a card as well as having discard. I quite like that. I'm always happy to have discard and mill in the same deck. Vivi, so this is where things get a little funny. So if your opponent has to, or say your opponent draws, they've got 3 cards in hand, they draw to 5, and they're like, I can't do anything, or I don't want to do anything, I'm just going to pass turn. Technically, they have to pass through every phase of the game regardless. So you say go through main phase 1, go through attack phase, go through main phase 2, and end my turn. So that means they have to pass through attack phase. So they can say, I'm just going to end my turn. You can say, well, in your attack phase, I am going to pay 2 fire and put Vivi into the break zone, deal 8k to one of your forwards, and you now have to discard a card. So even if your opponent doesn't want to attack because they look at your field and be like, if I break that during their attack phase, it means that I'm going to have to discard a card. Well, you can force their hand, kind of. Well, literally, actually, by discarding Vivi, hopefully breaking your forward, but also making them discard. You can do a similar sort of thing with White Mage. There's a few forwards where you can just put them into the break zone for added effects, but it would mean that using White Mage, your forwards also become harder to kill, but your opponent has to discard. So, like I was saying earlier, restricting the way in which your opponents can kill your forwards can be kind of awkward, and trying to make it so that they can only kill your forwards during their attack phase can be very hard. But if you're using monsters which aren't forwards until they go to their attack phase, it can be a good way to kind of get your foot in the door, so to speak. Now, people don't really run too much monster destruction at the moment. It might become more prevalent in the new set, but I don't think it will, to be honest. But yeah, your opponent goes to attack, you make Gigas forward at that point, that's where the issue lies. But Gigas is still a pretty big boy, you know, so he's not going to be that easy to kill, but, you know, your opponent could have an Ode and they're like, oh, I'm going to have to discard a card, but if he gets rid of Gigas, right? Marlboro, so again, you can only make him forward as soon as your opponent goes to the attack phase and doesn't have to do anything otherwise, but the fact he's only a 6k means he will die easier, which is actually something you want, but when he blocks or is blocked, all the forwards your opponent controls lose 2000 power, which is good in quite a few ways, because it means that hopefully if you've got a couple of forwards, your opponent won't attack with anything else because all their forwards will have lost 2000 power. But Marlboro also probably dies as well, so he might take out a 8k forward even, but he's only a 6k forward, which means that your opponent then has to discard a card. Bomb, same sort of deal, make him a forward, put him in the break zone, your opponent now has to discard a card. Dash, put him in the break zone at 5 damage, break one of your opponent's forwards, make them discard. Kinda gross. And then there's Realm, so your opponent could attack, you use Realm to make a Whale Zombie a forward, you can block with said forward if you want, but then just put him in the break zone, and then you can use his monster ability of put Whale Zombie into the break zone, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, return these to the top and or bottom of your deck in any order. So because he was a forward, when he went into the break zone, it means that your opponent has to discard a card. Fun times! Alright, Dorgann, so this is a bit of a love letter to a deck that my friend built, and it's not I say it's not an uncommon deck, it's a meme deck, it's the very definition of the word meme deck, but it's fun and I figured I might as well talk about it a little bit. So Dorgann, when a backup enters your field, choose one forward opponent controls, remove it from the game for as long as Dorgann is on the field. So if Dorgann gets killed or bounced or anything like that, all those forwards your opponent controlled or did control and you remove from the game, they come back onto their field. So Mion, you can play Mion to bounce other backups to then steal things with Dorgann. It also gets you cards. Now you combine that with Yargrosh, and this is the horrible play. So you could, let's say you've got a couple of backups down. You play Mion, steal your opponent's forward, you bounce one of your backups, and you draw a card. You play Yargrosh to bounce Mion. You steal another of your opponent's forwards. You then play Mion to bounce Yargrosh, steal one of your opponent's forwards, draw a card. You see where I'm going with this? My point is that with these two you've gone effectively an infinite loop as long as you can pay for their costs to come onto the field, which with Mion means you draw a card anyway. You can just keep stealing your opponent's forwards. Sid, so he's another good little engine just to get you those 1-cost backups, including Yargrosh. He can go find that for you. But, you know, if you get Sid early on, you can play Sid down, start getting yourself some of those little 1-cost evokers to play them, just start stealing your opponent's forwards before they can get a chance. And, you know, they only cost 1, so you can't get better value than that, really. Tidus, so there might come a time when both Yargrosh and Mion are down. There's nothing you can do about it, you know, you've gone to full backups, you had to at the time, but now you can play Tidus to bounce Mion or Yargrosh back to your hand, and then start the whole forward stealing engine again. And White Mage, yeah, so forwards or cards that protect Dorgann are key, because obviously, like I said earlier, when Dorgann leaves the field, those forwards will be coming back. Now, if they have, say they had another Bartz, and then you'd also removed a Bartz with Dorgann, they would come into the field and both of them would be gone because they would break. You can't have 2 of the same forward or same name forward onto the field, so they would both break, which is kind of funny, but generally you want to protect your Dorgann. Unzanganashi is also another good way of doing that. Alright, the dreaded Rampair. Yeah, when Rampair is put from the field into the break zone, you may play 1 category 11 forward from your hand onto the field. So, he came out the same set. Oh no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Claris can set you a job king. That's Rampair. So if you really are being that disgusting person that runs a Rampair deck and Earth Lightning, sure, go play that Claris, get yourself a Rampair and play Rampair as soon as possible. But yeah, in the same set, Garland, you play Garland onto the field, you have to break something of 2 or 3 or less, I guess I'm going to break Rampair. What are you going to bring in with Rampair? Well, you're going to bring in Shantoto, aren't you? Yes, you probably are. Now, she is with Rampare, grossly strong. When she enters the field, select one of the 2 following actions. Choose one character plus 3 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field. So you could bring Rampare back if you so chose, but you can also choose one character with 3 or less in your opponent controls, break it. So you've still got the offensive option there as well. But you could bring Rampare back, or you could bring something else like Illua. So let's just play this back, shall we? You've got Rampare down, you play Garland to break Rampare. You bring in Shantoto, who will then bring in Illua. You've just gained 3 forwards, and you can use Illua's S to then go swinging with those 3 forwards. Illua's S will also mean that all your opponent's forwards lose 2000 power. And you have got a first strike 9k, just a 9k, and a 6k, but with that 2k less power, that's pretty strong. And that is why I don't like Rampare. Well, no, I do like it. I think it's a good card. He's a very strong card, but whenever I see a Rampare deck, I get a little salty. I'm just like, well, it plays itself, doesn't it? It's like playing a game on easy mode, shall we say. Now, not that I'm saying you shouldn't play a game on easy mode, because, you're playing for the story, but there isn't a story in this, is there? You just want to win. Camlanaut, so you could break Rampare to bring in Camlanaut, which could then go get you a dark card, potentially Chaos to fill the space that Rampare left. Camlanaut. So obviously this would work well with the other Ildnarch, and you probably want to play Ildnarch over Camlanaut, given that Ildnarch is the higher costed forward, but also when they come into the field, you get to dull one of your opponent's forwards, which then synergizes with Camlanaut. If your opponent controls 4 more dull characters, your opponent discards 1 card from his own hand. If you'd play Camlanaut first, then Ildnarch, it's a bit back to front, really. Archangel GK. When Archangel GK enters the field, frees all the forwards opponent controls. Now, Lightning's got a lot of good ways of dulling out your opponent's forwards. I mean, you've got Amon, Maya, there's the new Anima. There's plenty of ways. Like, Lightning's always had good ways of dulling things out, so you can do that, and then Archangel to just, freeze them all. Another Archangel. So, I mean, the problem with this is that you can just be off colour. You could be mono Lightning, be like, oh yeah, all of a sudden I've got my Archangel in the field, and your opponent's like, oh, I hadn't accounted for this in Lightning. Although Lightning, to be fair, does have a fair few forwards that can attack multiple times, but still, the option's there. And Lightning and Fire both have great ways of giving haste, so you could just break Rampare through any means, probably through Garland, as I mentioned before. Bring an Archangel, and all of a sudden you Red Mage him or Belias him. It's like, yeah, now you've got an Archangel to deal with, and your opponent's like, oh, Alright guys, thank you ever so much for watching, I appreciate it. Let me know what you think, and I will see you guys in the next video.